Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to peel back the glittering curtain of Victorian domestic life to reveal the highly curated, almost theatrical performance of the dinner table. We often picture the Victorian era as this time of stiff collars and silent obedience, but when we actually look a little closer, we uncover a fascinating world of elaborate social armor, toxic beauty, and incredible hidden labor.
So we usually think of Victorian women as being completely confined to household drudgery, but some writers of the time, like Elizabeth Robbins Pennell, totally flipped the script on this idea. She firmly believed that women shouldn't abandon their traditional roles in the kitchen, but rather that society should treat those roles with deep respect. In fact, Pennell declared cooking to be the ultimate form of high art, practiced by absolute geniuses. Suddenly, middle and upper-class Victorian women were encouraged to unleash their culinary creativity, completely transforming the mundane chore of cooking into something truly worthy of admiration.
Section 1. Cooking as High Art. Reclaiming the Kitchen. To really wrap our heads around this, we need to start in the front of house. There's a famous quote from designer William Morris: "Have nothing in your houses that you do not know to be useful or believe to be beautiful." And that perfectly captures the aesthetic movement of the late 19th century. This was an era absolutely obsessed with art for art's sake. The whole movement transformed the ordinary home into a beautiful canvas. Middle-class homeowners with artistic ambitions were suddenly flooded with guidebooks, pattern books, and design manuals, all aimed at elevating the beauty in their everyday surroundings. The home wasn't just a place to crash anymore, it was a carefully curated exhibition of personal taste.
Moving on to Section 2, Staging the Aesthetic Table, the Grand Performance.
Since the home was basically turning into a private art gallery, hosting a dinner party became the ultimate way to elevate your social status. The simple act of eating turned into a highly planned theatrical experience. Middle and upper-class women meticulously decorated their tables with expensive glassware, crisp linen, glazed fruits, beautiful foliage, and brilliant lighting, just to totally dazzle their arriving guests. They even brought in eclectic ceramics covered in popular motifs, like peacocks and sunflowers, to add a sense of fresh, daring artistry to the meal.
And the dinner itself? Oh, it was a massive, multi-course production designed to totally showcase their wealth. A typical bill of fare would move elegantly from soup straight to fish, followed by hearty roast meats or stews, before transitioning into heavy puddings and sweets. Finally, if you can even imagine still having room left, it would end with cheese and dessert. We're talking 5 distinct phases, roughly split evenly throughout the evening. Each course required its own specific utensils, different plates, and a flawlessly timed delivery.
Which brings us to Section 3, a strict social performance, rules of engagement.
Here's the catch, though. Guests were fiercely judged on their mastery of etiquette, because this was never just about the food. Dinner meant strictly following rules on which fork to use, exactly when to speak, and even how to sit. The home itself was basically a stage designed to project an image of perfect respectability to the outside world. And that appearance of respectability, it was worth more than gold. Lose it, and you lost your friends, your invitations, and even your children's futures. Because the stakes were so high, these elaborate dinner parties often masked severe financial debts. A family might secretly survive on thin, watery soups all week long just to afford the performance of a lavish Sunday roast for their guests.
The contrast between the grand illusion guests saw and the reality the family actually lived through was just stark. Families would furnish their front parlors with expensive velvet chairs, pianos, and porcelain to impress visitors, while silently enduring freezing bedrooms. They'd decorate with the highly fashionable, brilliant green wallpaper of the 1880s, completely unaware it was literally laced with arsenic. Yes, their impeccable taste was actively poisoning them, a danger so severe that Queen Victoria herself ordered it stripped from Buckingham Palace. And behind closed doors, the entire family would bathe once a week in the exact same metal tub of water, leaving the youngest child to wash in gray, freezing water.
All right, let's drop the curtain and look at Section 4, the hidden culinary labor, the backstage crew.
To maintain this effortless illusion of high art, an incredible amount of hidden labor was required. What's really fascinating is how the servants themselves were styled. According to guidelines from a 1910 Ladies' Home Journal, a maid's spotless uniform was deliberately used for social signaling. The standard was set the absolute second a door opened. Crisp white aprons, specific collars, and smartly bowed ties were strictly required. The servants were practically human furnishings, meant to visually communicate the family's exquisite taste and management skills to anyone who visited.
But beneath those crisp, spotless aprons was a brutal physical reality. Just imagine being a young nursemaid. You're waking up at 5 a.m. in a freezing cold room. First, you have to walk out into the dark to haul heavy water inside. Then, you have to light the massive iron kitchen stove by pure instinct and touch, literally judging the heat by the color of the flame on your forearm, all before the family even opens their eyes. This relentless, exhausting physical labor was the unseen fuel that actually powered the Victorian artistic home.
Now for Section 5, the working class reality, surviving the grime.
For the vast majority of the urban working class, the kitchen was absolutely not an artist's studio. It was a cramped room meant purely for survival. There were no sprawling estates or velvet parlors here. Urban working-class families squeezed their entire lives into a single damp room. We're talking about a space the size of a modern bathroom where up to 6 people lived, cooked, washed, and slept. It constantly reeked of coal dust, grease, and boiled cabbage. The cast iron range ran almost constantly, making the room overwhelmingly hot in the summer while the walls stayed perpetually damp.
The starkness of this divide really hits home when you look at the dinner plate. While the wealthy dined on multi-course roast joints, glazed fruits, and petit fours, a factory worker was out there fueling an 11-hour back-breaking shift on thin porridge, bread scraped with meat drippings, and weak tea heavily sweetened with sugar just to make it feel like a substantial meal. Bacon was a rare luxury reserved strictly for Sundays.
To put this into perspective, a working father in the 1880s might bring home just 25 shillings a week. Out of that tiny sum came the whole shebang: rent, food, clothing, coal, and medicine. They couldn't even afford to burn coal in their own parlor on a daily basis. Instead, a working-class woman's only piece of social armor was often a newly scrubbed front step. That one clean step signaled to the neighborhood that despite the crushing poverty and exhaustion, the family still maintained their standards and hadn't given up.
So, as we look back at the exhausting lengths the Victorians went to for the sake of projecting social respectability, from arsenic wallpaper to multi-course meals funded by secret debt, we really have to ask ourselves a pretty uncomfortable question. How much of our own hosting, our perfectly curated Instagram grids, and our online sharing today is still just an elaborate performance? Are we basically just setting a Victorian table for the digital age? It's definitely something to think about the next time you post a picture of your dinner. Thanks for watching this explainer, and keep questioning the world around you.